Hello. You say hello to everybody. You go, hi. Wave your paw. You wave. You have to teach you to wave. Yeah? You'd like that? You can say hi, everyone. Welcome to Shake Up Saturday. You know, so if they had a super fantastic sparkling day. Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Mesa in Arizona. Hope you all had a super fantastic sparkling Shake It Up Saturday. How did your day go? Did you try opposites? Did you try the opposite hand instead of your dominant hand? Did you, try sitting in a different seat while watching TV or a movie? Did you try eating with the opposite hand? Did you try sitting at a different seat at the table while you had a meal? What did you try new today? Let us know in the comments below. And if you tried the opposite hands, what did you try things at? Did you try like brushing your hair with the opposite hand? Did you try brushing your teeth with the opposite hand? All sorts of things. Writing, eating, playing sports. Yes, I can. I wasn't very good with my backhand, so I taught myself when I used to play tennis many years ago. I wasn't very good with a backhand, so I would just switch the racket to my left hand and whack it back. I wasn't very good with that either. It's just whatever I felt like doing at the time. But being able to switch hands with my tennis racket, meant I could stretch out a little further than what it would have been with the backhand. So sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It's just one of those things. But I always served right-handed. I could not. I tried and I tried and I tried to do a serve with my left hand, and it was not pretty. So how has your day been trying things in opposite? One of the things that happens with your brain when you try things opposite is that you actually take notice of things around you. You're more conscious of what's around you. It's like when you proofread anything, most people start in the top corner and read left to right. You know how we normally read. And proofreading, you start in the bottom corner and work right to left and work up the page. And the reason you do that is that it forces your brain to look at each word individually. Because and you see them over Facebook all the time. There are times when there are words, and all you need to do is have the first and the last letter in the correct places, and it doesn't matter what happens in the middle, the letters in the middle. Your brain computes it and tells you what that word is without you actually checking the spelling. But when you're reading backwards, you're forced to look at each word, and then you can turn around and say, okay, is this word the right word? Because there's different types of there. You think of that one, there, T-H-E-R-E, T-H-Y apostrophe R-E, T-H-E-I-R. Yeah, so there's different words. So is it the right word being used in the right context? So when you change things up and you look at things differently, you can see things that you wouldn't see if you were looking at it the normal way you look at it. So that's why it's always good to do things with your opposite hand, because it forces you to slow down and think about your process. What are you doing? You know, if you're buttering your bread, do you get it right around the edges, or you just do a smattering across the middle? If you're stirring your coffee or your tea, maybe that one doesn't really work that well. If you're brushing your teeth, are you getting all your teeth? Because now if you're using your brush with your opposite hand, this is where electric toothbrushes come in really good. Because you don't have to worry about the actual brushing motion. You're just moving the toothbrush around your mouth, and the electrical part still does all the vibrating of the bristles or the circling of the bristles, whatever your toothbrush does. But now are you making sure you get each tooth on both sides and all of that sort of thing? So when you use your opposite side, you're forced to slow down and think about what it is that you're doing instead of doing it on autopilot. Come here, sweetie girl. There's people outside. And if you use your normal dominant hand, you just go through the motions automatically without thinking about things a lot of the times. Think about when you go out and you're driving and you're going to that same place day after day, like if you're going to work or something, and you're taking that same route to and from work, how many times do you get home? You're like, oh, I'm home already? How did I get here? And you remember nothing of the drive. This is why you change it up a little bit and you go out and you take a different route to get to work or a different route to the grocery store. It's the same thing with picking up a pen. If you're normally right-handed, picking up a pen with your left hand. If you're left-handed, picking up a pen with your right hand. And forming words, because now you're actually thinking about the letters and the formation of the letters, and it just gives you a completely different perspective, but it engages the brain into a different way of thinking, and it engages parts of the brain which may be sleeping a little bit, but it wakes the brain up, and the brain gets into this creative mode. So like, oh, we're trying something new today. Awesome. This is great. Let's get going. And so you can have fun with it. I mean, I've even tried drawing with my left hand, and I'm okay at drawing some things, really crappy at drawing other things, and but when you use your non-dominant hand to draw something, it's very interesting what comes out. You go for me. Sometimes, and I have heard of this happening. I haven't actually seen it, but sometimes some people are actually better drawing with their left hand than they are with their right hand, which is kind of interesting. It's just how the brain works for some people. Some things I'm better at drawing with my left hand than my right hand, and vice versa. But I'm not the world's greatest drawer, but I can draw okay at times, and other times it just looks like crap. So sometimes the left hand actually does come out better than the right hand stuff. But it's that forcing of the brain. It's utilizing different parts of the brain and engaging the brain. And the brain likes to be engaged and be excited and try new things. So this is what the Shake It Up Saturdays are all about. It's out there, it's getting there, it's trying new things, trying something different, looking at things from a different perspective by sitting at a different seat at the table, so that you're not looking at the same view. You're now forced to look at the room with a different view. Yes, you may now be sitting with your back to the TV, but what's now in front of you? Do you have floor-to-ceiling windows with this incredible view outside? Or do you have floor-to-ceiling windows and you stand look outside and go, oh, the gardens need weeding in the backyard. Oh, that bush is looking a little overgrown. I need to go trim that. Or do you suddenly realize that you have this amazing vista out there and you've been wasting your time sitting on the other side, filling your mind up with whatever's going on the TV? So looking at things from different perspectives. If you normally drive, if you're a couple and husband normally drives, switch it up. Let the wife drive for a bit and the husband sit in the passenger seat. I would tell you, Brad and I used to have some amazing discussions when he was in the passenger seat, because he was not a passenger. He was not a good passenger. He liked to be behind the wheel and in charge, and it used to drive me nuts. But there was times where I had to drive because he physically at the time was not capable of driving. And I remember one time he was doped up on Benadryl. He had been doing fine with the chemo and not having any reactions to it or anything. But one day we were in there and they hooked him up to the IV. And I kind of looked at this bag and I thought, that doesn't look like the right bag. So I asked her, I said, is that the happy juice? And they always know that I call the happy juice. And it's the same nurse every time. And the happy juice is the steroids. And I'm looking at this bag going, is that the happy juice? And she's like, oh, yes, this is the happy juice. And I'm like sitting there thinking, I don't think so. But, about 10 minutes into it, Brad started having reactions. And he'd be sitting there and all of a sudden his arm would go like this or his foot would go like this. And he was starting to have a reaction to the thing. And so I went out to her and I said, what do you actually have in his IV? And she goes, oh, that's the chemo drug. I said, that is not the happy juice. I said, what about the steroid? Are we not doing the steroids anymore? And I said, the steroids, the happy juice. And she's like, oh, she says, I forgot to do that first. And so she went and switched it out and gave him the steroids and all that. But because he'd started having this reaction to the chemo drug, when they put him back on the chemo after the steroids had run, he started having difficulty breathing, and so they started doping him up on Benadryl. And so after that, he had to have 50 milligrams of Benadryl via the IV every chemo session that we had after that. And he would be doped up he would basically sleep for 3 hours of chemo. He thought it was great. Oh, you want to play? This is her Kong. She wants me to throw it for her. She can actually get her mouth around it. And there's my mum texting me. So the first time they gave him the Benadryl and it literally knocked him out, I woke him up and I said to him, okay, it's time to go home. I said, where are the car keys? And usually after chemo, he had been fine to drive, but he was absolutely in no way, shape or form able to get behind the wheel of the vehicle. He goes, I'm fine to drive. And it was like having somebody drunk. And so I got the keys. And I went in, I said, right, I'm going to go move the car by the door. I said, you just wait there and wake up. And he said, okay. So I went and moved the car by the door and backed it in so it would be he could come out the door and straight into the passenger side. And it took a nurse on one side of him, me on the other side of him, and we walked like this down the hallway to get into the car. And the whole way down, he is telling us how perfectly capable he is of driving. So we put him into the car. Now, usually Brad whenever we would go anywhere, Brad would be the one driving, and I was happy to sit in the passenger seat. But this was the first of one of many trips that we would take where I would be driving and he would be in the passenger seat. You get a totally different perspective. And him being somebody who was so used to driving, suddenly having to sit in the passenger seat, it was amazing the things that he would start to see. He'd go, "Oh, how long has that been up there?" I go, "Oh, that's." I go, "What?" And he'll talk about some building or something. I go, "Oh, yeah, that's a new building that went up about 3 or 4 months ago," and he hadn't seen it because he'd been busy driving. But this one day when he was driving, I was driving and he was doped up on medication, we go to get onto the freeway. We're in Virginia, so we're getting onto 66, and I am just merging onto the freeway, and he wakes up and says, "Get over there!" He says, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be over there in the HOV lane." I said, "Shut up! I'm driving. Shut up!" And with that, he went back to sleep. I mean, I was just merging. I still had to cross 4 lanes of traffic to get to the HOV lane. But we finally got, and I didn't hear another peep out of him until we got him home. But after that, there was many trips where I had to drive, and he would start to see things he hadn't seen before or didn't know where they were, because when he was driving, he had more of a tunnel vision thing because he was concentrating on the traffic, where he had to be in the traffic at certain times, what lane he was in, and all that. So he was missing a lot of the scenery that's going on around the sides of us, and that I could sit there and admire because I'm the passenger. I could sit and admire. And that's kind of one thing that when I'm driving the RV now is I am missing a lot because I'm the one driving. And so there's times I'm driving along and I say to Zeffie, I said, "You want to take over the wheel and drive?" And it's times like that I wish I had somebody that could travel with me that could take over the driving so I could get to enjoy the scenery, because there is some incredible, incredible scenery around this country. And I got glimpses of it as I was driving. But there's times I just want to sit and absorb the scenery as we drive along, but I can't do that because I have to concentrate on driving. So there's times that you need to get out of the driver's seat and get into the passenger's seat and just have a look around, see what's going on, see what's happening. But yeah, Brad was the funniest when he was in the passenger seat because he couldn't stop fiddling. He'd fiddle with the radio, he'd fiddle with the climate control stuff, and I would whack his hand and go, "Mine." He'd go, "But you're driving." I said, "Mine." And the rule in the car was whoever was driving was in control of the radio and what we listened to. That was the rule of the car. So when he was driving, he could pick what he wanted to listen to on the radio. When I was driving, I got to pick what I wanted to listen to on the radio or on the CDs or whatever. But that was the rule of the vehicle. Whoever's driving, they are in control. They get to select what music we listen to or what audiobooks we listen to, that sort of fun stuff. The other person could operate it as long as they put on whatever the driver requested. But yeah, he was a fiddler. He was constantly fiddling and then criticizing my driving. I was just like, enjoy the view. And then he would tell me about all the stuff that was going on. They say women gossip. You should hear the men. Honestly, in the car, he's like, "Oh, look what they're doing. Oh, I wonder what they're doing." And off he'd go on some little story about them. But yeah, so change seats every now and again. Even if you drive regularly and you've got somebody else with you, get them to drive so you can enjoy the scenery and see what's going around. Get that different perspective. The brains love different perspectives on things. So that's it from me for today. Enjoy the rest of your Shake It Up Saturday. And tomorrow, I cannot believe tomorrow is going to be day 500 in a row of Facebook Lives. I mean, that is just nuts. I'm hitting a 500 mark tomorrow. So I don't know if we're going to do anything special for that. I just know it's Serenity Sunday and I get to kick back, relax, and put my feet up for a bit. So have a super fantastic, sparkling rest of your Shake It Up Saturday. Keep the Shake It Up going the whole weekend. Instead of just doing it for today, do it for tomorrow. Sit in a different place. Do different things. Do things out of routine. Try using the opposite hand to what you normally use for doing things. And just, different seats when you're watching TVs or movies or whatever. Different seats at the dining table. Rotate around the seats at the dining table every meal and sit in a different place. If you normally sit at a breakfast bar, go sit at the dining table. Most people have a formal dining room that some people just never use. The stuff's in there and it never gets used. Go have a meal in there just because you can. A formal dining room does not have to be for a special occasion. Just go plan to have lunch in there tomorrow or something, or and sit at different seats. You know, use the side seats without using the head and the foot of the table. Just use the side seats or something. Because that's one reason Brad and I never had a dining table. This is like people come over, we're sitting at the table at the breakfast table. But our breakfast table was massive. It was 4 feet wide and 7 feet long, and that was without the leaves in it. It could seat up to 12 people around it if we put both leaves in it. We actually did that one Thanksgiving, and we had 6 of us at the table. It was great because it was my very first Thanksgiving. We put the leaves into the table, so it turned it into a like a 12-foot table or something. And we put the 2 leaves in. We had one end butted up against the island. We'd swiveled it 90 degrees, put one end against the island, and then we had 3 people on each side of the table. We had no head and foot of the table, and we just laid in all the food on there. It was fantastic. It was great, and we all had plenty of elbow room because some people eat like this when they eat. I like to eat like this. But yeah, again, it gave us a different perspective because we turned the table and we all sat along the sides and just had a blast. It was a great experience. So if you have a formal dining room and you only use it on special occasions, every day is a special occasion. So break out the dining room and break in the dining room and go have a meal in there or something. Anyway, have a super fantastic sparkling Shake It Up Saturday. Carry it over tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow morning for Serenity Sunday. He konera. Right, you ready for